Yeah, so welcome everybody, and a particularly warm welcome if this is your first time coming to Sangha Night. There might be people who haven't been to Sangha Night before, so especially warm welcome if that's you. And yeah, so the theme for this year at Sangha Night has been the refuge tree of the tree Ratna Buddhist story, which is this symbol over here, this picture over here, this image. And you can see it as a map. In a way, it's a map that represents how the teachings of the Buddha found their way through history down to us today. How the teachings of the Buddha have arrived in Sheffield with us, particularly how they've shaped our community, our Buddhist community. So there's historical figures on there. There's on the lotus at the bottom, Sangha Night, who founded the movement. There's various historical figures who've been important for the history of Buddhism and of our movement, especially there on there as well. And there are also some archetypal, symbolic figures who, the figures that you're not likely to meet down the pub or on the bus, but you may meet in deep meditation or in dreams. So there's some archetypal, symbolic figures on there. And in particular, at the moment, we're looking at an important group of archetypal figures called the mandala of the 5 Buddhas, or the 5 jhinas. Jhinas means conquerors. So there's a group of 5 who are just at the top of the refuge tree, and they're known as the 5 Buddhas or the 5 conquerors. And last week we heard about a red Buddha called Amitabha from Satyajyoti, and this evening I'm going to be talking about a green archetypal Buddha called Amoghasiddhi. But you'll notice that there's one figure who's hugely, or more central in a way, larger, more central, more important in a way than all the other figures on the tree, and that's the Buddha himself, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. So that's where I'm going to start the talk this evening, is with Shakyamuni Buddha. He's a person who, the whole Buddhist tradition began 2,500 years ago. So yeah, about that time, or 2,500 years ago, in northern India, the Buddha was staying in a town in northern India called Shravasti. And he was doing his usual alms round. He's collecting food from the villagers. But this particular day, the villagers in this particular place were very scared, very agitated, distressed. So he asked them what the matter was, and they said, well, in the forest nearby, there's a very violent murderer called Angulimala. And Angulimala means finger necklace. So Angulimala had been given this name finger necklace because of each of his victims. He had taken one of their fingers and made a necklace to wear as a souvenir, gruesome souvenir. And so yeah, Angulimala collected 99 fingers on his necklace, and he was looking for the 100th. He wanted 100 fingers. And yeah, the villagers were basically terrified. They were too scared to go anywhere near the forest anymore. And they told the Buddha, don't go. The Buddha was on his way to go through the forest. They said to him, don't go through the forest, because Angulimala will get you. He'll kill you and take your fingers. But the Buddha wasn't scared. The Buddha wasn't scared at all. He wasn't fearful. And he just continued straight on into the forest. He went straight into the forest. And so when Angulimala saw the Buddha come in, he was surprised, but he was also excited because this could be his 100th finger. He had 99 fingers for quite a while, and he was waiting for his 100th, and nobody would come in the forest. And all of a sudden, there was this foolish monk who had come into the forest. So he said, great, well, this is going to be my 100th finger. So he jumped down from his tree with his weapons, his sword and his bow and arrows, and he sprinted after the Buddha. He said, well, yeah, this is going to be straightforward. I'm going to just take the Buddha out and have my 100th finger. So, but what happened was very strange. It wasn't what Angulimala expected. The faster he ran towards the Buddha, he ran faster and faster. And the Buddha just kept a very steady pace, just walked very mindfully, kept a very steady pace. And Angulimala couldn't catch up with the Buddha. It was just really perplexing him, so he ran faster and faster. And the Buddha just still stayed the same distance in front of Angulimala. So this really confused Angulimala, so he just shouted out, "Stop, monk, stop!" But the Buddha carried on walking, but he turned to Angulimala and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It's you that needs to stop." So this really perplexed Angulimala. What's going on? So he said to the Buddha, well, what do you mean? What do you mean saying that I need to stop when I've already stopped? And you're still walking and you're saying that you have stopped. What are you talking about? What do you mean? And the Buddha said, well, I've stopped harming people. I've stopped violence, Angulimala. You too need to stop harming people. You need to stop violence and harming people. And this this was enough. The whole, the kind of this awesome presence of the Buddha, and this mysteriousness of not being able to catch up with him. These very direct words, they were enough to shake Angulimala out of that current state of mind, to lift him out of that state of mind. And immediately, he wanted to become a disciple of the Buddha. He asked to become a disciple of the Buddha. But meanwhile, the villagers had gone to the local king to get an army of soldiers to capture Angulimala. They came back to the forest, and they couldn't believe when they got to the forest that Angulimala had been tamed, had been converted by just the Buddha on his own. When they'd gone to get a whole army, they couldn't believe that the Buddha had managed to peacefully tame and convert Angulimala. So this story for me, it draws out some qualities of the historical Buddha. It draws out the fearlessness, to begin with, the fearlessness of the Buddha. He wasn't afraid at all, he wasn't afraid, everybody else was terrified. And also the direct action of the Buddha, he just went straight into the forest, he continued on the path, he went straight into the forest in a way, to help Angulimala. But also it draws out this kind of paradoxical, mysterious quality of the Buddha. So there are three qualities I want to draw out during tonight's talk. Yeah, so the Buddha, first of all, the Buddha was a man of great fearlessness. As well as this particular story with Angulimala, there's numerous occasions throughout the life of the Buddha where he displayed this great quality of fearlessness. So there's times when, the Buddha wasn't always popular. He went into towns and villages with his message, and sometimes it made him unpopular with certain people. And there's times when people actually tried to kill the Buddha. And there's one time when there was an assassination attempt, and there's a lot of monks the monks basically formed a circle around the Buddha's tent and making a lot of commotion, but they wanted to protect the Buddha. And the Buddha came out to see what the commotion was and just sent them away. So the Buddha doesn't need any protection, so he just sent them away. And there's also the time when the Buddha was approaching his death, and he just very fearlessly approached his death with great equanimity and compassion. So there's numerous times where the Buddha displayed this quality of great fearlessness throughout his life. And this supreme confidence of the Buddha, this lack of any fear, well, that instilled a great confidence in the people that were around him and his disciples, his followers. The Buddha's fearlessness instilled in them a great confidence and a sense of fearlessness in themselves. So if the followers of the Buddha were close to the Buddha in his presence, well, it filled them with confidence being close to the Buddha. It helped them to overcome their difficulties. They could see, well, the Buddha's example here overcame these difficulties, so can I. They could see things with a different perspective being in the presence of the Buddha. But it wasn't always possible to be in the presence of the Buddha, so the Buddha's disciples couldn't always be physically in the presence of the Buddha. So an important practice for those disciples of the Buddha was to call to mind the Buddha, to bring the presence of the Buddha to mind through their imagination, just to dwell in the presence of the Buddha, to recollect the Buddha's presence. And they did this while they were apart from the Buddha. And again, it would instill them with the same sense of confidence and inspiration and fearlessness. And after the death of the Buddha, well, this became an even more important practice. People would bring to mind the Buddha, they would call to mind the Buddha, they would recollect his qualities, and that would inspire them and fill them with confidence. But over the centuries, as the tradition developed, well, people, when they were drawing to mind the Buddha and dwelling on his qualities, they would encounter different figures. Different figures started to be encountered in deep meditation, which would kind of spring out of recollecting particular aspects of enlightenment, particular aspects of the Buddha. And so there's figures that really emphasise qualities like fearlessness or compassion or wisdom or love. And these are some of these archetypal figures on the refuge tree that we've got there. And perhaps one of the most important set of figures, particularly for our community, is this set of figures of 5 Buddha mandalas, the 5 Buddhas. And each of the Buddhas draws out different qualities of enlightenment, different qualities of the historical Buddha. And the different qualities of the Buddha, they're also conveyed in some of the gestures that you see with the hands of the Buddha statues that we have. So last week we saw the meditation mudra of Amitabha, which is the gesture of meditation. There's also the gesture of fearlessness. Sorry, that's a gesture of fearlessness. I'm going to come on to that one. There's a gesture of generosity. And there's the earth-touching mudra or gesture of the Buddha as well. And, so the different gestures, well, they also symbolise these different qualities of the Buddha. And there's an important one which I've just mentioned, which was fearlessness. So this is the gesture called the Abhaya Mudra. It's a gesture of fearlessness. And we see that We've got a statue outside with that gesture, and also a statue up on the roof, which you may have seen, with the Buddha with the fearless gesture. So the Buddha's got his hand just forward in an expression saying, well, I'm not scared, and you don't have to be scared either. It's an expression of fearlessness. Yeah, so the spiritual life involves facing difficulties and fears. Sometimes the spiritual life can be scary. It involves difficult truths like death, our own mortality, the truths of change and impermanence. Trusting other people can be scary. Sometimes it's difficult to trust another person and to open up to them. And sometimes I can find particular people quite scary, particularly if they're different to me and I just don't understand them. I find them quite scary. I noticed that this weekend there was a guy who, I'm quite introverted and quite serious, that's kind of how I am some of the time, a lot of the time. And this guy was just really kind of extrovert, just seemed to be really relaxed and quite flamboyant. And I just thought, well, initially I thought I don't like this person, and then I thought actually I'm scared of this person because he's just so different to me. I don't understand how he operates. So sometimes I can find other people scary. And there can be times when we experience quite strong fear, great fear, and it might be that we just wish to stick our head in the sands, to bury our head in the sands, or just to close down from the world, to close down from other people because of this fear. And like the disciples of the Buddha, well, we might not always be able to feel like we're in the presence of the Buddha or enlightenment. And at times like these, when we're experiencing fear, it's very important to be around people who can instill that confidence in us, that sense of fearlessness and inspiration. So to be around friends who do that for us. So particularly for me, Amoghasiddhi is somebody who instills confidence and fearlessness in me, and other friends, Achara as well. Being around them, I just get reassurance, and I just realise actually the problems aren't as big as I realised, and everything will probably be okay. So being around friends can help us to be fearless and to have confidence. And Sangha Night has called this the gift of fearlessness. We can give other people a gift of fearlessness. So it can be very powerful if there's a crisis situation or people around you are in negative states or anxious or worried, but you can maintain a positive state of mind. Well, that can have a very powerful effect on people. And Sangha Night has called that the gift of fearlessness. Actually, could I have a picture? I forgot about the Abhaya Mudra. So this is, so you press the right, hopefully the right cursor. Let's try that. Let's try that again. So that's the Abhaya Mudra, a statue of the Buddha. Very strongly just saying, I'm not scared, the Abhaya Mudra. I can't remember what the slides are, so it'll be a surprise. We'll see what they are. I put this talk together not too long ago. So we'll see what happens. So if you can bring a calm, positive state to the people around you, well, you're giving them the gift of fearlessness. But there's times when we can't do that. There's times when we're just frightened, when we're scared. And my instinctive response if we're frightened is to close down and to put barriers up between me and the world for safety, just to close down and just try and shut off from the world around me. But in an open state, we can feel very connected to people around us and very connected to the world around us. We can have a sense of abundance, of wanting to share what we've got with other people. But when we close down, we're more likely to focus on just protecting what we've got, getting more for ourselves, just looking after number one, really. And this closing down, well, it's like we're putting shackles on ourselves. It makes us less effective. And we're likely to experience jealousy and envy and resentment of other people in this kind of state. And we can feel resentment of other people's success, what other people have got. And unfortunately, I'm no stranger to envy. I do get envious sometimes myself. And when you work around such talented people that I work around, I work around very talented individuals, sometimes I can get jealous, I can get envious of their qualities. And particularly if I'm in a negative state, I can feel a sense of lack and I can feel envious of their qualities. And especially over the years with my friendship with Maitridasa, there have been times when I get envious of Maitridasa. Because he's so talented and he's so altruistic and friendly, and he spent loads of time in India helping people, and he makes really good curries and dals and chai tea. And I said, well, I can't do any of those things. And so I get envious of Maitridasa sometimes. But I love him to bits as well. He's a very good, very dear friend of mine. But if I'm in a negative state, I can find myself getting jealous, envious. And recently I had a conversation with somebody where they were asking me what I thought of Machidasa's qualities, and if he might be suitable for to do quite a high-profile task. And my response was both kind of pleasure and delight for Machidasa, thinking, well, yeah, it's great that he's being considered. But at the same time, there's a voice inside saying, what about me? I want to be considered. It's not fair. What about me? So it's quite painful when that happens, and to notice it is quite painful, especially with somebody that I'm so close to and such good friends with. But it does happen. And it seems to come from me with a sense of lack, not really valuing my own qualities or recognising my own situation, and it leads to envy of other people, resentment. So yeah, it's not inappropriate that I'm talking about Amoghasiddhi this evening, because Amoghasiddhi, as well as being the Buddha of fearlessness, he's also the Buddha who converts the poison of envy into the wisdom, the all-accomplishing wisdom, the wisdom of unobstructed success. So that's the figure that we're looking at this evening, is Amoghasiddhi, and hopefully the next slide will be Amoghasiddhi. So this is a painting by Arloka of Amoghasiddhi. I'm not sure if it's the same one that Amoghasiddhi has. Is this your painting, Amoghasiddhi? It's not that one, so there's a different one in Amoghasiddhi's room, which is also very good. And this is a painting by Arloka, who's an order member in our tradition of Amoghasiddhi. And Amoghasiddhi is very rich in symbolism, so you'll notice straight away the Abhaya mudra, the gesture of fearlessness. And that's in his right hand. His right hand's in the gesture of fearlessness, of authority, supreme confidence. In his left hand, he holds a double thunderbolt, a crossed thunderbolt, a double vajra, crackling with energy. He's green, you'll notice he's green. His body is made of green light, and he's seated on a dark green lotus. He's described as being the sun at midnight. So each of the Buddhas in this mandala have got a time of day associated with them. Amoghasiddhi's is midnight, the very dark, scary depths of the night at midnight. But Amoghasiddhi is described as being the sun at midnight, which sounds very paradoxical. I'll talk about that later on. And his wisdom is the all-accomplishing wisdom, spontaneous, compassionate activity, unobstructed success. So this is the figure of Amoghasiddhi. Perhaps one of the strangest things about Amoghasiddhi is the creatures that pull his chariot. Amoghasiddhi is said to be pulled through the air at great speed by creatures called Shang creatures. And these creatures are a hybrid of an eagle and a human. So they've got the claws and the wings of an eagle, but they've got the torso and the face of a human. So they're very strange creatures, these Shang creatures that are pulling Amoghasiddhi through the sky at really great speed. And in their hands they hold, or claws, whatever they've got, cymbals, and they're crashing these cymbals at great, making a really great noise, loads of energy as they're flying through the air at great speed. Quite a strange symbolism around Amoghasiddhi. And so he's the Buddha of this mandala. Each of the Buddhas is associated with a particular poison that they transform into a particular wisdom. And Amoghasiddhi transforms the poison of envy into the all-accomplishing wisdom. And we saw last week, well, each of the 5 Buddhas, they're also associated with a realm, a different realm on the Tibetan wheel of life. And we saw, well, last week, traditionally, that can be actually considered to be physical realms that you are born into. We could also see them as perhaps psychological states, emotional states that we experience. And what we saw on we've seen on the beginners, the intermediate course, how actually our states of mind create the world that we experience. So if we're in a particularly pleasant, beautiful, expansive state of mind, we're likely to experience a very beautiful, expansive world. We're going to create a world around us which is very expansive and beautiful. If we're feeling quite negative and threatened by other people, we're going to create a world which is threatening and scary around us. So the state of mind we're in really can create the world we live in. And Amoghasiddhi, well, he is the Buddha that enters the realm of the Titans, the Arshuras, and he converts them. He gives them what they need. And so I've got a picture of, well, it's not a picture of an Arshura, but it's the closest I could get. This is one of the orcs from the Lord of the Rings. And Sangha Night said in his talk on the 10 pillars that the Arshura is a bit like the orcs in the Lord of the Rings. So this, you could bear this in mind as an Archer. So, yeah, the Archers, or the Titans, they're deeply jealous, fiercely competitive. They're constantly at war with each other and at war with the gods. They're jealous of the gods and everything the gods have got. And they're constantly trying to make war with the god realm. So these fiercely jealous, competitive beings. So yeah, the modern day stereotype of the Archer might be the career politician. The career politician will say anything they can to get more power, and make any promises that he's got no intention of keeping. They might even sell their granny to get a few more votes. So this is like a modern day stereotype of a Titan or an Archer. Or it could be the banker who wants more power, more wealth, and doesn't care what the consequences might be for the wider world. They just want more and more power, and they don't care how they get it. It could be the boardroom executive who do anything to get a directorship, anything to become a director. So it's worldly success and power that drives the Archers, that drives the Titans. They crave this power, and they don't care how they get it. But it's worldly success without any ethical basis, without any ethics to it. And that isn't really success at all. It's not success. It's a path to unhappiness. It's not a path to happiness. Sangha Night, he's described this type of behaviour as acting in a power mode. It's when we use the power we might find ourselves with to exploit other people, to get what they might not want to give us. It might be fingers for a necklace, or it might be our pensions or jobs. It's basically using power to exploit other people. So how can we really be successful? What does it mean to be really successful? How can we act in a way that will give us the unstoppable success of Amoghasiddhi? Well, the Buddha showed Angulimala, the way to success doesn't lie through the power mode, it lies through what Sangha Night is called the love mode. Through renouncing violence and acting out of love and kindness, cultivating our connection with other people. Amoghasiddhi, in the same way, Amoghasiddhi, he is known as being the Buddha of Karma. He's the head of a family of figures called the Karma family. So the Amoghasiddhi is the Buddha of Karma. And can we go back to Amoghasiddhi on the picture there? So karma, literally, the word karma literally means action. And we could translate the law of karma as meaning basically our actions have consequences. Each of our actions, every single action we perform has inescapable consequences for ourselves and for those around us, the world around us. For Buddhists, karma is particularly important because there are certain ethical actions that lead to a more expansive, a more positive, a more clear state of mind, to more happiness. And there's also unethical actions that will lead us to a more cramped, closed down, unhappy state of mind. So, yeah, so karma, the law of karma, shapes how our actions shape our state of mind, which shape the world we experience. It's very, very hot, isn't it? Very hot. Very hot. Amoghasiddhi is the Buddha of the North. So there's the Northern realm. And the North is an important point on a compass because it is what we navigate by. The North is what we use to navigate by. It's how we know that we're on the right path. And for Buddhists, well, our moral compass are the 5 precepts, the 5 ethical precepts. And these give us a direction to head towards. They tell us how near, how close we are to Buddhahood, or how far away we are from Buddhahood. Because the 5 precepts are how the Buddha would naturally behave. The Buddha would naturally behave in accordance with the 5 precepts. So they give us a moral compass. They show us if we're on the right direction, the right path. So the path to unstoppable success begins with becoming aware of our actions and how they shape our minds and the world that we experience. Becoming aware of whether our actions are in line with the 5 precepts or not. And by becoming aware of our actions, by becoming more aware of our minds, well, we create a gap. We create a gap between our habitual responses and how we could choose to act. We create this gap. It's almost, we can step back, we can watch what's happening, we can watch our habitual response in a situation, and we create what's called the gap, which we talk about in the beginner's course. So, if we create the gap, we can choose how we behave. We're not caught up in our kind of habitual cycles, and we can choose how to behave. So, through meditation and the cultivation of awareness, we can see more and more, we can just uncover more and more of our patterns, and we can dwell more and more in the gap, and just choose. We can choose how we behave. We can choose whether to behave ethically or not. And you could imagine, it's as though you could imagine that our mind, our conscious mind, is like the tip of an iceberg. So if you imagine a huge, great big iceberg, and all you can see above the surface of the ocean, surface of the water, is just a very small tip of the iceberg. And that's very much like our conscious mind, the part of our mind that we are aware of, that we're conscious of. But there's a great, vast, huge amount of our mind, these huge, great big depths, that we're completely unaware of. And when we start to meditate and begin to bring awareness to ourselves, to our depths, to our minds, well, we begin to notice that there's lots of different aspects to it. It's not as straightforward as we might have initially thought. It's as though there's lots of different strands, all going in different directions. Even you could say there's lots of different selves. I think Sangha, we were doing Mitra study last night, and Sangha, the quote where he says something like, it's as though we're a loose bundle of selves, kind of loosely held together by a name and address. Basically just this kind of loose bundle of different selves. So you might notice where we behave differently in different situations. There's how we are with our friends, this is how we are with our friends, how we are at work, how we are with our family, how we are down the pub, and how we are at the Buddhist Centre. It's almost like we're just a different person in different situations. But through the cultivation of awareness, by becoming more aware, we can slowly gather all these different strands, these different aspects of ourselves together, to unite and to become a unified person, just to kind of gather all that energy, all the different strands of us together, and to become a unified person. And this is a process that we call integration, the process of integration. So an integrated person will know themselves, they'll know themselves very well, they'll know very clearly what they think about something and how they feel about something. They'll be in contact with their emotions and how they feel about something. Other people will experience them as being reliable and consistent. They'll stick to their commitments, they'll follow through on what they say. So an integrated person is starting to act more successfully, more in line with their ideals, and they're becoming more like the unstoppable Amoghasiddhi. So when we're integrated, we're more like Amoghasiddhi. And this is expressed by the double Vajra. So we've got a picture of the double Vajra, this symbol of these interlocking thunderbolts, interlocking diamond thunderbolts, crackling with energy. You get these kind of two poles meeting together around the central point, and just crackling with energy. So what am I supposed to say next? So an unintegrated person is the opposite. An unintegrated person won't be aware of themselves. They'll be out of touch with how they really think and how they feel, what they really think and feel about something. They'll be unaware of their emotions. They'll be unaware of how they feel about things and some of their own patterns. So it might be really obvious to everybody else that they're just sitting on loads of anger, but they just can't see it. An unintegrated person won't be able to see it. They'll be completely blind to it. And an unintegrated person won't be able to stick to their commitments. So a few years ago when I became a Mitra, just after I became a Mitra, I was quite full of myself. I was particularly full of myself, and I had this idea, well, I think I should have a role at the Buddhist Centre. I think now people I should have some kind of job or role at the Buddhist Centre. So I went to meet with Amoghasiddhi. I'd recently started to meet up with Amoghasiddhi, and he was the chairman of the Buddhist Centre at the time. So I told Amoghasiddhi about this idea that I thought I should have some kind of role at the Buddhist Centre. And Amoghasiddhi said, well, that's great, because I've been recently thinking I want to hand over some of my responsibilities as the chair. I said, oh great, fantastic, this is just what I've got in mind. And Amoghasiddhi said, well, what I'm looking for is somebody to change the light bulbs. I thought, well, that's not, I didn't mind something very glamorous, something really glamorous role at the Buddhist Centre. And I thought, well, fair enough, I'll change the light bulbs, and then maybe I'll move progressively there. I'll be chairman soon after that. So I decided, I said, I'll do that, I'll change the light bulbs. So at the weekend, I came to the Buddhist Centre, and I got the ladders out, and I changed all the light bulbs, and they're all working and they're all shining. And I was very pleased with myself because I'd done that. And then the next weekend came, and I didn't really want to go and change the light bulbs, but I thought, well, I've committed to doing this, so I'll go and do it. So I went and I got the ladders out, and I changed a few more light bulbs I needed to change, so I changed them. And then I didn't do it after that. I never did it again after that, unfortunately. And quite soon after, I had to go and meet with Amoghasiddhi again. And asked to resign from being a person because I wasn't integrated enough to be able to change life. I wasn't able to do it. I wasn't able to commit to something and just see it through, which is very humiliating. But actually, I learned quite a lot about myself just from that experience. So I was grateful to Bodhinaga for that teaching. So it's when we commit to something, when we really commit to something, we find out how integrated we are, how integrated we actually are, whether we're able to follow through on our commitments or not. Another key factor for integration are our external conditions. So there's our internal conditions, there's also the external conditions we find ourselves in. And part of integration is becoming aware of the effect that external conditions have on us. So some of the conditions we put ourselves in will support our efforts, they'll be in line with our ideals, and some of them won't. And it's important just to become aware of the effect that different conditions that we put ourselves in, the effects that they have on us. And there's a lot of emphasis placed on our movement in our Sangha, of friendship and Sangha building, of just being around people with the same ideals, like-minded people. So people with the same values, like-minded people in the Sangha will draw out your best qualities. Hopefully that will have a very positive effect on you. But it's really important just to notice what the different effects, different conditions, external conditions will have on you and your state of mind and your behaviour. So how do we go about becoming more integrated in practice? What do we do to become more integrated in practice? Well, as I've mentioned awareness a lot, and awareness is key. Cultivating more awareness is key. And the mindfulness of breathing is a very important practice to cultivate more awareness. So through doing the mindfulness of breathing, we'll be becoming more aware of our experience. And in a way, the different parts of ourselves just gather around one focus, which is our breath. We just keep noticing our breathing, returning to our breathing, and we're just kind of gathering the different strands of our experience together. Just cultivating awareness, becoming more and more aware of our own mind, our own behaviours, just basically increasing our awareness. It's not just on the cushion that we practice mindfulness. We need to practice mindfulness throughout the day, just the whole of our daily lives. We're just cultivating more and more awareness, just trying to be aware of exactly what's happening, what are we thinking. So also reflecting about your ethical practice, reflecting on your own ethics, talking to friends about your ethics is an important way of trying to start to uncover some of your ethical patterns, starting to get more familiar with them, just starting to bring them into awareness out of the kind of murky depths, just into your conscious awareness. So talking and reflecting about ethics is another integrating practice. And just notice how consistent are you? Are you able to follow through in your commitments? Can you stick to something you say you're going to do? That's just really interesting, just start to notice that. So the double vajra is a symbol of integration, Amoghasiddhi and integration. And this type of integration I've been talking about, this kind of psychological, emotional integration, it could be seen to be the horizontal axis of this double vajra, this kind of gathering the different strands of ourselves, gathering them together. It might, I like to see it as being this horizontal axis of the double vajra. But the crossed thunderbolts, these two thunderbolts crossed and fused together, well, that symbolises to me, the fusing together of two different dimensions, different aspects, very different levels of experience, very different dimensions. So sometimes it might be we decide we're going to do something, we might make a conscious choice, we're going to commit to something, but we mysteriously, it's quite mysterious, we find we never get around to doing it, we just can't do it. And we might decide with our rational mind that something seems like a very good idea, it'd be a nice idea to live a more simple life, but we just actually can't bring ourselves to do it, we can't get around to actually doing it. And on the intermediate course we use the analogy of a horse and a rider. And actually, can we just open the door, because everybody's kind of melting. I think if we have the door open, it'd be let's open that one as well. Let's open the door. Thank you. Just get a nice breeze. So we might find that we choose to do something with our rational mind, but actually we can't get around to doing it. It's quite mysterious. So on the intermediate course there's this analogy of there being a horse and a rider. And the rider of the horse is likened to being our rational mind. So the rider decides they're going to take the horse in that direction. But the horse, which symbolises perhaps our unconscious depths, our volitions, our emotional drives, the horse just goes wherever it wants to go. It's just completely oblivious to what the rider wants to do. It just goes wherever it wants to go, and usually towards a attractive horses, or the food bag, wherever the food bag is for the horse, or a nice stable. It's not, it just goes wherever it wants to go. So, Amoghasiddhi is the Buddha of volition. And a lot of the time it may feel like we're in conflict, our volitions are in conflict with each other. We've got opposing volitions that seem to cancel each other out. All of our energy can be taken up in its internal conflicts, desperately trying maybe to squash down our inner titan, our inner ashura, and the bits of us we're scared of or we think other people might not like. And we get, basically all of our energy just gets tied up, just gets cancelled out in these internal conflicts. But if we want to awaken, if we want to become enlightened, following the footsteps of the Buddha, and to fulfill our real potential, to be really successful, well, we need all of our energy available to us. It's not, we can't have all of our energy tied up in these conflicts. We need to have all of our energy available to us. So we need to resolve these inner conflicts, these tensions. We need to convert our inner titans. We need to harness our deeper energies. We need the help of the horse. So Amoghasiddhi isn't afraid of the warring titans. He enters their realm and he converts them. They listen to him because he's got something that they haven't got. He's powerful and successful and awesome. And he's got the secret to real success and happiness. So it's only this that makes him stop and take notice. So just like Angulimala took notice of the Buddha, Angulimala was in awe of the Buddha. So Amoghasiddhi enters the realm of the titans and they listen to him and he converts them. So Amoghasiddhi is said to be the sun at midnight, bringing light into those scary, dark, eerie places, the depths of the mind. And it's said that Amoghasiddhi works in subtle, hidden ways, below the radar of our conscious mind. So it might appear that nothing's really changing, that there isn't any external change going on, but Amoghasiddhi is at work. He's below the surface of our rational mind, our conscious mind, secretly transforming, producing order and harmony and balance in our deepest unconscious. So the double vajra of Amoghasiddhi is a symbol of total psychic integration, the unfoldment of all of our potential, perfect harmony and balance. And it's a symbol of the transformation of our deepest energies, because that's how we can be really, really successful, like Amoghasiddhi. So we also see symbols of this integration and unfoldment of deep energies in the life of the Buddha, the historical Buddha. So there's an incident towards the end of the Buddha's enlightenment experience, where the Buddha was sitting just absorbing the experience of his enlightenment. And then out of a lake, the depths of a lake, came a naga, a very powerful naga serpent. That image here. And this is a statue, a clay statue of the Naga king Muchalinda, who comes around and wraps himself around the body of the Buddha to protect the Buddha. So you got this, basically these very powerful coils of this Naga serpent fused with the body of the Buddha. And so for me it's another symbol of this, our deepest energies being fused, being harnessed in service of enlightenment. Yeah, so this great power and energy is available to the Buddha. And there's another symbol suggests also the resolving of these conflicts of volition and energy. And it comes from the same time, about the same time. So just after the Buddha's enlightenment, there's a myth that basically all hatred and enmity just ceased momentarily within the universe. And animals that were usually opposed to each other mated with each other and produced these hybrid creatures. And quite strange stories, but again for me it kind of suggests, well, around the Buddha's enlightenment, just this kind of deep union of opposites, this kind of integration of deep energies, and something new being produced, being born out of that. So, Amoghasiddhi's got lots of mysterious, paradoxical symbolism around him, suggesting the union of opposites. Perhaps none more strongly than the Shang creatures that pull him through the air at great speed. So the Shang is, as I said earlier, the half man and half eagle. So a symbol of the unconscious, the animal side and the kind of rational human side fused together. So like the rider that's converted the horse, the Shang represents a man that can travel to higher states with the wings, aided by the wings of his deepest energies, his deepest unconsciousness, a winged man. And Amoghasiddhi is also associated with the element of air and sound. So in the same way that sound could just travel in any direction, completely unrestricted, without barriers, sound just travels in all directions, unobstructed. Well, same with the energy of Amoghasiddhi. It's completely unobstructed, completely without limits. So what might it sound like when these great inner tensions and conflicts are resolved? When two opposing forces are brought together, all that energy is released. Well, it would sound like a big crash of two great big symbols, and all of that energy, all of that noise being released. And the Shangshangs are flying through the air, pulling Amoghasiddhi through the air, just crashing in great two huge symbols together, making a huge din, huge crash. So we've nearly reached the all-accomplishing wisdom. At this stage, we've nearly reached Amoghasiddhi's all-accomplishing wisdom, but not quite. And we're not quite there yet. There's still some transformation to take place. So we start to become successful when we can gather all the different parts of ourselves together, when we can act with integrity, we can integrate ourselves, we can gather ourselves, the different strands together, and act with integrity, in line with our deepest values. We start to become successful then. We can become even more successful when we integrate and harness our deepest energies and get those energies behind our practice. We become even more successful. But it's when our awareness becomes integrated with reality, with the truth of how things are, the nature of reality, that's when we become really, really successful. That's when we become unstoppable, like Amoghasiddhi. So, basically through the practice of ethics, we can start to become more aware of other people. We can start to empathise with other people and to see things from their perspective. With deep awareness, we can become aware of the impermanence of everything, the impermanent nature of everything. Every single thing we experience, every part of our experience is in flux. It's constantly changing. It's insubstantial. There's no substance that isn't changing. Everything's just in a flow of change. We start to see through the barriers that we create with other people. We start to see through actually our fears. We start to see that the fears that hold us back, that separate us from other people, that separate us from reality, they're mind-made. They're mind-made fears. We start to see through them. And it reminds me of a scene from one of my favourite films, which is The Matrix. So we've got a scene from The Matrix. And we've got the hero of the story, Neo, and throughout the film, he's been gradually realising he's been taught, a bit like a spiritual path, he's been taught that actually all of the world around him is mind-made. The world around him is mind-made. And the only limits that are placed on him are through his fear. His fear is what holds him back. And once he realises that, once he conquers that, he just realises he's in charge in a way, he's conquered all of the threats. And there's this real turning point in the film where he realises this. And he really starts to live that, where all these bullets get shot at him, and he just sticks up his hand in the abaya mudra, the gesture of fearlessness, and the bullets stop, all of the bullets just stop, and just fall to the floor in front of him. And he's conquered the matrix, he's in a way, he's conquered all of those mind-made fears. So, in the same way, when we become aware of the insubstantial nature of everything, the insubstantial and permanent, constantly changing nature of our own mind, when we start to see through the limitations we put on ourselves, the barriers we put between ourselves and other people, once we see through them, well, we're no longer limited. We're no longer limited by those. We start to become fused with reality. We start to see through the artificial barriers that we put up between ourselves and other people, between ourself and other. So the self and other distinction become blurred. We see that the idea of our self being fixed and separate from other people is an illusion. It's an illusory concept, an idea. And we see that to work for the benefit of other people is to benefit ourselves. So we begin to see with the all-accomplishing wisdom of Amoghasiddhi, and our action becomes transformed into spontaneous, compassionate activity with unstoppable success.